You are performing this repair at your own risk. We cannot be held responsible for any injuries or damages done to your device while attempting a repair. In this video, I'll be demonstrating how to replace the headphone jack on an iPod Touch 3rd generation. The process is identical for the 2nd generation, however the digitizers are different. And in this case, removing the old glass and digitizer is going to require replacing. So you're actually going to have to do 2 repairs: the headphone jack as well as the front assembly, because the front assembly is very badly damaged when opening it up to access the headphone jack. Now, if you think you can open it up without damaging it, go for it. But I'm going to tell you right now, I would recommend replacing the headphone jack in addition to the front glass and digitizer assembly for a much cleaner repair. It's always a good idea to make sure your device is off before you open it up. So now I'll wedge that tool in between the rubber seal and the glass, which will allow us to pull the front glass from the old frame. And you want to work your way around the edges. And if you need to, you can heat it up more. Just be conservative with your heat gun or your blow dryer, whatever you're using, because you don't want to apply too much heat and risk damaging the iPod. So continue to work your way around the edges, gradually heating it up, especially around the top and bottom portions. And you'll work your tool underneath the glass to bring that front glass away from the plastic midframe. Now that you've brought the glass away from the frame, this will allow the plastic frame to flex. You can take your small flathead and wedge it where the clips are located. And you can see where they're located by looking at your replacement digitizer assembly. And you want to work your way around the edges, prying up where the clips are located. Once you've freed the front assembly from the iPod, you can open it up to the left, and there's still a cable attached. Now, since you'll be replacing this anyway, you could just cut the cable and then remove the actual plug after. But I'll show you exactly how to remove the plug. Take your flathead screwdriver and wedge it in between the plug and the port and twist it gently, and it should come undone. Now, replacing the headphone jack does require a soldering iron, and the soldering points are very small. The first step in the repair is to remove the old headphone jack. In order to do this, you'll need to remove 2 Phillips screws. And then what I like to do is actually cut out the old headphone jack. You take a razor blade and you can splice the cable in between the connections and the actual plastic jack. In order to actually remove the jack, you're going to have to flip the LCD screen back, which will allow you to access 7 Phillips screws that are holding a metal plate beneath the LCD screen. Now, the battery cable is also soldered in place. So what you're going to do is take the metal plate, which has the battery adhered to the back underside of it, and you're going to twist it sideways, which will allow you to remove the old jack and insert the new one. Now, there's 2 ways to go about installing your new jack. You can solder over the existing joints, or you can remove all the existing solder and the cable underneath and then reapply a very thin coat of solder. Now, that's the best way to go about it, because there's a pretty thick coat of solder over the existing joints and they'll tend to jump between connections, in which case you have an unsuccessful repair. It's unlikely that you're going to be successful on the first time. So if you purchase a jack from our site, you'll actually be purchasing a pair. So you get two shots at it. It's a very complicated repair, mostly because the joints are so small and the solder that's on there has a very high melting point. So it's really hard to get the new jack situated right and soldered in place without having the solder jump between joints. After soldering all 5 joints and reinserting the 2 Phillips screws, we want to give the jack a test before closing the iPod. When no jack is plugged in, does the music play through the external speaker? When the jack is plugged in, is the music playing through both ears? And finally, when you unplug the jack while it's playing, does the iPod automatically pause? So now you're ready to secure your new front assembly in place. You have to peel back a plastic piece that's protecting the inside glass, and you're going to want to bend the cable at about a halfway point, and then you'll go ahead and plug it back in to the logic board. Now in this situation, you want to be extremely careful not to tear the digitizer cable. There isn't much play in it, so if you don't hold it close enough when you're trying to plug it in, you could end up tearing that cable, and then you're going to have to buy a whole new digitizer. Once the digitizer cable is securely plugged into the logic board, you don't want to close the iPod. You want to first test the digitizer to make sure that the part's not defective, the cable is plugged in properly, and you didn't accidentally damage the cable. So you basically want to make sure that it's working to avoid the hassle of having to remove the front assembly once again. Now it should be noted that the home button won't function until you close the front assembly, until it's flush with the rest of the iPod. There's contact points on the assembly as well as the logic board that touch, and when you press the home button, it completes this circuit and the iPod detects that as input. When you're ready to close the iPod, you want to apply an even pressure around two sides. The top and bottom of one side first, and then the next side. Apply an even pressure, and once the assembly is relatively flush, you can go ahead and secure the clips along the sides as well as along the top and bottom. Please feel free to comment or contact us directly through our website. Thanks for watching.